Okay, JB, we are back at this beautiful convertible coupe.
Yeah, this is a 38 Lincoln Zephyr Convertible Coupe. Again, this is the car that originated in Arizona. We have information that's been here at least 75 years, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I had an opportunity to buy it many years ago, didn't. Ended up buying it from a friend who did buy it and paying a premium, so there's a lesson there.
Yeah.
But the convertible coupes were made up from coupes, as we talked about earlier, and you can see that that's reflected here in this. If you notice, this comes up, and you'll see some filler right here. When the factory made these, they took coupe doors, cut them off, and built a filler plate.
No kidding.
And that's why if you look at a coupe, you'll see the same outline.
Yeah.
Well, they're not going to make it a convertible part. Very rare for that to actually happen, especially as early as this car was, because you're talking about 30 or 40 cars. There's no way you can tool up for that. So they just had craftspeople, and they just bang out pieces. Take a coupe door, cut it down, put a top on it, call it a convertible.
Since we saw this car a couple weeks ago, what's the process? How do you go about tackling this?
Well, you start out by truing all the openings, and if you notice, this car's not that bad, but Oscar had already worked on this a couple of years ago and got some of the kinks worked out of it. But what we're doing here is, if you notice over here, you can see a piece of metal had to be added, because when he pushed the door opening out to align it with the Porta Power, which is right here, this is called a Porta Power, and what it does is it creates hydraulic pressure, and it forces the sheet metal to go where you want it to go. Now there's some spring back. So let's say, for instance, you want this to be 48 inches, you might go to 48 and a half.
Okay.
And then it's going to spring back. But it started out at 47, which means the door is going to bang into the opening, or you're going to have or no gap. So you've got to get all those gaps straightened back up again. This is a convertible. Yeah. And it's lived a hard life. And so it's going to be necessary to true all that stuff up. It's a handmade car. It was made at the factory. Obviously, it wasn't built at Lincoln. It was built by one of their sub-manufacturers that was contracted to build a very limited number of these. Okay, and this is the second 38 convertible coupe. There was a first one that was stopped right here. This deck came back before. We talked about that earlier.
Yeah, so there was like a half-year design or something.
Yeah, and everybody said, nah.
They want a little more space in the back.
I want some more space, because obviously you got more room back here. You got a place where a second seat could be integrated, and not much of one, but at least you could get, it'd be a three or four passenger rather than just a two passenger. Yeah. So that expanded the use, and it was more popular, and it did sell a little better than the early cars. Okay. Otherwise, it's identical. Again, it's just cut up out of a coupe. You can see that this is the really unobtainable part of it, and that's coming up with these top bows. Some of it we fabricated, some of it came off of other cars, and we just high graded everything into the cars that we have. Mercifully, we were able to find or manufacture the convertible tops for the 38 convertible coupe that we have and the 39 convertible coupe.
Is there any difference between 38 and 39?
Very slight differences between the two, but there are differences.
Okay.
And if you look in the factory manuals, you'll see some slight differences. Very similar in a lot of ways, but remember, there's different trim on 39s. There's some other things. Remember, the running boards are not present any longer, so down low on the sill, you're not going to have the same car at all. Right. Because this whole thing comes right off. In the case of the 39, it's built in. Yeah. So there's a lot of changes down there.
Looks like the floor's in pretty solid shape overall.
Yeah, the floors were never rusty. We didn't really have to do much with that.
That's pretty amazing, really.
Yeah, we're going to have to get it up off the chassis, and remember, they're welded to the chassis.
Right.
So that makes it a lot more fun. So we'll probably have to get the car up in the air, or we have a sandblaster that we like. We may just send it down there and have them do it. Once we get the metal straight, the only downside is they tie it up for a week or two. Yeah. Because they're waiting to get in line, then they blast it, and then it comes home. Yeah. So one of the reasons we do a lot of our stuff internally is not because it's price effective. It isn't. But it stops us dead in our tracks when some other vendor has it and he's got control You can't do anything.
Okay.
So you can see that this is a pretty good car. It's been sitting out. So if it was going to be bad, you got some surface rust here, but the metal is very sound.
Okay.
So we just strip off. You can see a little bit of primer here. This is bare metal, but there's no real big bodywork problems that have to be dealt with. The gaps on the fenders are really good. So that's good news. It was a pretty good car from the cowl back when we got it.
Okay.
And where it fell down, we used a 4-door sedan for front end sheet metal.
Oh, okay, sure.
And instead of trying to fix it, we just replaced it, which is a lot faster and actually a lot better if you can. Right. Of course, you got to cannibalize an entire car to do it. It's a beautiful car and a very valuable car.
So is the plan currently to take this back like as original as possible or slightly modified? Or?
No, I think we're going to go original on this one. One of the things we've learned from the cars we did was that if you want to take a good deal of time and no small amount of money, you can do anything. There's a limit to that. And so what we're trying to do is go back and say, all right, is it really worthwhile to do some of this stuff? And if it is, we'll do it. If it's not, we're not going to. We're in a unique position of having it done both ways. And there was nothing a whole lot wrong with the original design. I mean, I got a 38, and as you know, we drove it all over town.
Yeah, and that's a 38 coupe is the only
38
thing.
coupe, and it's got original engine, original transmission.
Right.
There's not a whole lot of downside there. Now, if you want to go a lot faster or you want to stop better, then we got to stop and think about that. But we're not just going to rush into it. We're going to say, here's the alternatives. This is what we're going to expect with respect to an original car, and here's what we do if we do a certain amount of modifications, like modern rear end, modern disc brakes, and that kind of stuff. We're gonna be a more circumspect about that because we've done it both ways.
Right. Okay.
That's really nothing wrong with either one of them. Well, you can see now we did change out one of the doors. I was fortunate enough to find a convertible door. I believe it's the passenger door. The guy sold me a set of convertible doors.
Wow.
I don't know what happened to the rest of the car, but and I had them up there for many years. Then we got around to doing this one, and one of the doors on, I think it was the passenger side, was pretty funky.
Yeah.
And I said, why are we going to fetch that thing back? Let's just start out with a really nice.
Yeah, this door seems to match more paint-wise.
Yeah,
so it's probably
I think
the
this
one
is
that was
probably
original.
And it was a good door to begin with.
Yeah.
The other one was pretty funky. And the convertible doors are real complicated. They got all this convertible-only stuff in them. So,
well, what would be convertible-only on the inside?
Well, you got to remember that the windows are entirely different.
Oh, are they?
Sure.
Okay.
You got a window with no frame.
Ah.
So you had the frame. So you can see here where it truncated it, and it would come around like this. If you look at a coupe, you'll see that.
Oh.
Maybe through the magic of Barrydom, we'll see what a coupe looks like, and we'll see them together.
Yeah.
And you'll see that commonality. And if you can look down in here and see where they welded it. In those days, they used brass a lot and lead, so they weren't particularly concerned about it being pretty or anything. But you can see clearly that this window is most definitely convertible only.
Okay.
Now, if there's anything on the earth that's hard to find, it's one of these.
Right.
Not going to find it.
So do you have the glass for this too?
Well, the glass is easy.
Oh, you're right.
It's the frame. It's a chrome frame, convertible only, 38 only, or 39 only.
Gotcha.
So if you're missing one, suicide is a possible solution. Other than that, it's just hard to making one of these for any amount of money. I don't know how you do that.
It'd be very difficult.
They're very difficult, and they're really finely made. But if you lose one, you're just got a big problem.
Okay, I didn't even realize
a lot of these cars get modified
in there.
Not because they wanted to, because they didn't have a choice.
Right.
They were missing stuff.
Yeah.
And so now it's vulnerable.
So modifying it was the
only option in their mind. Now that's not true.
Yeah.
Because you can make anything, and we've proved that many times. But people don't have access to the things that we have access to, so they aren't making decisions like, well, I can't come up with a window, so we'll just cut the whole car down or something.
Right.
And I don't know where these things come from, because every time you change something, there's a domino effect.
Yeah.
And sometimes you never get to the end of the dominoes.
Right.
And that's how cars suffer. Don't be thoughtful about it in the beginning, and you end up modifying a car which creates all these other problems that you didn't foresee. So now you've put the car in jeopardy because it may be in restoration or construction for 5 years. Where they're trying to solve all these riddles. So sometimes you just sit back, think about it. These cars are already modified when they were brand new.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah,
they already were modified.
The people that did it, and the designers that did it, and the craftspeople that did it, were exceptionally bright and very talented. So if you think you're going to out-talent the entire group at a design firm in 1930s, not a smart move. Really isn't.
These guys
or the 40s or the 50s. These guys are the cream of the crop in the whole world. They had the biggest automobile industry in the world, and they cherry picked those guys, and then they trained them to be, and then they gave them experience in those kinds of roles that they were very limited in some cases. Some guy only did doors. Some guys only did interiors. That's all they ever did. And they got really good at it. And then you come along with your
half-baked idea.
Half-baked, maybe quarter-baked. And you start thinking you're just as good as they are. No, you're not.
Right. Okay, well, this is fantastic to have this project underway, man.
Yeah, it really is. It's been a number of years waiting in line. It's not really holding up anybody else because Oscar's already done the bodywork and paint on.
Right, you're not doing body work on the other projects.
No, so we're not really losing time on the others. The others are in mechanical phase of it.
Very good. Well, thanks, JB. This is great.
Yep. Thanks, Oscar.